Actions speak louder than words. Welcome to Law and Society. Let's discuss Vice President Kamala Harris's Ellipse speech and rally that's about to take place today. So, it's an incredible action, the ability to be able to compose a message just by being at a place. But the Ellipse has the history of what happened 4 years ago. We cannot forget that from that very spot, Donald Trump incited an armed mob to attack the Capitol and stop the certification of the electoral votes in the 2020 election. That is where Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman lied to the American people about a free and fair election. That's where Donald Trump tried to overthrow our republic and, by way of it, deny Americans the right to their votes. Donald Trump is a criminal defendant in the federal District of Columbia for conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an official proceeding, and conspiracy to deprive rights, meaning our right to vote, all of our right to vote. So that's where we start, just by Vice President Kamala Harris giving her closing message there as a reminder of what happened 4 years ago and what cannot happen. In a way, what Kamala Harris is doing here is re-sanctifying that place, making it a place where democracy can protest peacefully, making it a place where we can go and have our differences be heard, but do so peacefully, to never go so far as Donald Trump did. And that is the threat that Donald Trump presents. If Donald Trump is elected, the first thing he will do is have his attorney general dismiss the criminal cases against him, both the Mar-a-Lago documents case and the DC conspiracies case. And then he's going to go after all of his political enemies, and he's going to clean house at the DOJ and other agencies, like stated in Project 2025. Don't ever mistake and believe Donald Trump when he says he doesn't have anything to do with Project 2025. His words and his actions and his allies' actions all point to pointers in Project 2025. And that ranges from prohibition of LGBTQ plus rights to prohibition on women, to reproductive health, to a culling of our civil services to a point where we would hobble administratively as a country, and then go after private people as political enemies, weaponize the government and the police force that he has talked about, that he would deputize and militarize, and go after civilians to cause from everything from mass deportations to we don't know what, because Project 2025 is as anti-immigrant as it is anti-LGBTQ, anti-woman. It is about asserting the patriarchy. I fully believe that this election is the last cry of the patriarchal form of leadership that we have had in our country for over 240 years. And the idea of womanhood coming up and us recognizing that women are equal. And that brings us to the other big thing, what this election is about. It's about freedom. It is about a woman's right to choose. It's about a woman's freedom to be able to do what she wants with her body. And I understand that the state has a right to life being preserved. And Roe versus Wade recognized that right. But Roe versus Wade secured the right to choose whether or not to terminate a pregnancy. And in Dobbs, with Donald Trump's help, for the first time in American history, a constitutional right was taken away from a protected group of people, women, and to be able to, the goal is to be able to restore Roe. And Kamala Harris's 100 days goal includes this reproductive freedom agenda. And that is why it is important for us to vote blue down ballot, not just for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, but for your blue senators and for your blue representatives to Congress. When you look at the two campaigns and you see the unity that Kamala Harris brings and the division that Donald Trump sows. At the Madison Square Garden rally, not only was there a comic who called Puerto Rico an island of trash, but there were others who were anti-immigrant. There were others who were anti-Muslim. There were anti-Semitic comments. There are fear-mongering of transgender people. There's these lies going out about taking kids from schools to hospitals to get their sex changed, but not from a woman, from a girl to a boy, though, just from a boy to a girl. They'll always go after that patriarchal soft point that the American masculinity factor has, is that, oh, we're going to attack masculinity, we're going to attack your manhood. But as many men have come out and said that real men don't denigrate strong women. Real men respect strong women. Real men go out there and stand up for the rights of strong women and all women. But on the other side of it, we have this vitriol, this hatred, this anti-immigrant rhetoric. That is all that is. And what's interesting is that when we, pro-democracy Americans, talk about what the vile is coming out of their events, like the MSG rally, they say, "Oh, you can't just hang it all on one joke." That was the latest, defense of what was said. Well, it wasn't just one joke. It was one of the things that stuck out, but the whole event was a big, mega stand back and stand by announcement. We see in Oregon that there were vandalisms that vandalized ballot boxes. We're going to see more of that. We're going to see action around election centers, protests around election centers. We're going to see far-right militia coming out, like the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, 3%ers, and others who will be targeting election centers, law enforcement areas, anything that is targeted by Donald Trump at the moment when he sends out the post on Truth Social. Just like it happened with the stand back and stand by. Just like it happened with the will be wild tweet. And I believe that, it is, we have to come to a point where we have to say there's a false equivalency here. We're asking Vice President Kamala Harris to be perfect, to be able to do her job, walk backwards in heels, and do that perfectly. And she's doing her job marvelously and doing it in heels. And no one's going to ask her to go backwards because we refuse to go backwards. We're moving forward. So that double standard that is present in this race between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris also reflects the double standard when it comes to men and women in our society today, where women still get paid 80 cents on the dollar versus men for the same exact job. Well, we're going to come to a point when the top job of our country will be a woman, and that woman will be paid the same amount as the men have been paid in that position. if not more, because salary of the president is always just increased. It has never decreased. So, I wanted to come out here and tell you the symbolic importance, point out and remind you of the symbolic importance of the ellipse. And we are reclaiming that space for our democracy when Vice President Kamala Harris gives her closing message there. We are standing there for freedom. We're standing there for democracy. And we're not standing there for violence. We're not standing there for fascism and autocracy and hate towards every minority group that you can think of. So think of Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden closing message as his fascist calling cry to all extremist groups to be on stand back and stand by so they can go out and cause mayhem and lawlessness in the name of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump can deny that by saying, I can't be held liable for what other people do with the words that I speak. That is, I take no responsibility. And that's exactly what Donald Trump has done with everything. He never takes responsibility. He said that when he was president. I don't take any responsibility. So our choices are made clear and clearer by the Harris campaign having the closing rally at the Ellipse. And then there will be other moments where Harris will be campaigning in other parts of the country. I believe that it would be prudent for the Harris campaign to do an interview with Joe Rogan. However, I don't think that the vice president should be, since she's also vice president at this time and doesn't have a lot of free time between campaigning and doing her job as the vice president, that Joe Rogan is complaining that he had to fly out to go see Vice President Harris, and the interview would only be an hour, whereas Donald Trump had given him 3 hours and came to his studio. Well, Donald Trump is a private citizen at this point. He's just a campaigner. You have to understand the security protocols of a vice president going and talking to you on your show, Joe Rogan. And at the same time, I believe that Kamala Harris should give Joe Rogan an interview. And if that is an audio interview, if that is a virtual interview, that's far more possible. It's up to Joe Rogan's ego to see whether he can handle it. It's, we already know that the Harris campaign has given them an hour. But you have to understand that the Harris campaign is also about the vice president of the United States, who has duties as vice president of the United States. So with that said, I want everybody to go out, remain vigilant, take a friend with you, go out and vote on election day or early voting, be cognizant of your surroundings, take a bottle of water because you might have to wait long in lines, take your phone and have it be charged. Don't confront people who you might politically oppose because they're there and being belligerent. Point it out to the authorities and just walk away after you vote. Keep yourself safe. And when the time comes to protest or when the time comes to celebrate, we can do that. Election day and before election, the mayhem of burning ballots, that's not what we do. That's not what pro-democracy citizens do. That's what anti-democracy and pro-fascist citizens do. And we have to keep an eye out for that. With that said, thank you so much for being here. Derek, thank you so much for being here. I do believe that women will save our democracy and set the course of this nation to a better direction. And I am looking forward to calling Kamala Harris Madam President. With that said, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon.